Hello and welcome to episode 5 of the Top of Off podcast. And we are reviewing day 5, the final day of action of the first test between England and the West Indies at Southampton. Now, that day of test cricket happened yesterday, but we were both busy and so we didn't record an episode last night. But life happens sometimes, and that's what happened.
You were doing your vegetables, weren't you? Your garden.
Yes, I was. I was digging the tomatoes and digging a potato patch in the garden. And
I was playing cricket.
Yes, you were playing cricket, and you got a shout out on TMS yesterday as well.
My name mentioned, and most importantly, Jonathan Agnew confirmed that I am your best friend.
Yes.
So suck it, Kev, who we are once again joined by. We are joined again by our good friend Kevil.
We are
rocking a Stuart Broad headband, subtly signalling where he stands on that debate.
So he's sending us a subliminal message about his loyalties with Stuart Broad or Jofra. But yeah, great stuff. And so we're going to be discussing yesterday's action, and you guys probably will have seen this by now. It was a day of agony for England. It was but absolute ecstasy for the West Indies as they won by 4 wickets. So we'll start with an overview of the day, and then we'll go into our talking points and discuss what we want to discuss today. And not just from yesterday's day of cricket, but also looking forward to the series now that the first test has finished. So yes, let us begin.
Just gonna start with 2 quick announcements.
Oh, go on.
First of all, just a reminder that tomorrow, and we will actually do it tomorrow, we again have our Intro to Cricket Beginners special. So please tweet in your questions at #TOOpod. Email us at topofoffpodcast@gmail.com and just bring your friends, bring people who are new to cricket, get them listening and get them into it. The second announcement, the major one, which we teased earlier on our social media, not that any of you read it, is that either on Thursday or Friday, one of the first 2 days of the next test, we will be joined by our special guest, Maya Bouchier, who is a professional women's cricketer who plays for Hampshire and for the Southern Vipers in the women's T20 competition. She's a very good player. And she will be joining us to talk about the day's play and just have a chat with us about cricket.
Yeah, so we've got a major guest on.
So tune in for that. We will promo it relentlessly on social media, so you won't be able to miss it. Her photo will be everywhere, but if she allows us to use it.
But yes, so there's exciting stuff coming up in the next week. So it should be good, and we hope you guys tune in for all of that, and we hope we manage to get some new listeners for it as well. But yes, let us begin with the subject at hand, which is day 5 of the first test, and we'll begin with that overview of the test. And so the day began on a knife edge, and a very, very finely poised final day of test cricket was to come. England resumed their second innings from 284 for 8 overnight after their collapse in the later stages of day 4, where they lost 5 wickets for just 30 runs. Jofra Archer made a fluent 23 as the last 2 wickets added 29 runs to England's total to bring them to 313 all out and set the West Indies exactly 200 to win. The onus was on England to bowl well to save the game, and they started that way, with both Anderson and Archer looking threatening in their early spells. Indeed, Archer took the wicket of Carlos Brathwaite within 27 minutes of the West Indies' second innings, leaving them on 7 for 1. From there, the quick wickets of Shai Hope, bowled by Mark Wood for 9, and Shamar Brooks, bowled by LBW by Archer for a duck, left the West Indies teetering precariously on 35 for 3. A toe-crushing Yorker from Archer forcing Windies opener John Campbell to retire hurt also added to their woes. From 35 to 3 at lunch, however, the West Indies fought their way back and turned the contest around, courtesy of a spectacular innings of 95 by Jermaine Blackwood, who threw off his reputation of batting aggressively and dangerously to produce a restrained, sensible and gritty test innings. Despite more hostile bowling by Archer and some key wickets by Ben Stokes, West Indies captain Jason Holder, already playing brilliantly in this test match, was able to see the visitors home along with John Campbell, who came back from his injury to support his skipper in leading the West Indies to a four-wicket victory in this first test. Not a very
Well,
good day for England fans.
the saddest thing perhaps is that we didn't get that nice kind of statistical perfection where we had both captains take each other's wickets in both innings. That didn't happen. Holder still in at the end. Also, the bowling was good to start with, and then after lunch seemed to deteriorate a bit. The fielding went a little bit awry.
Yep.
Joss Buttler dropped one down the leg side. I think there were a couple other dropped catches.
He dropped Blackwood as well, which was key, and it was in the early stages of his innings.
And so it kind of deteriorated and was a bit of a slow death for England throughout the day, which was very sad for us England fans. Ecstasy for the West Indies.
Yeah, and it's only the West Indies' second victory in 20 years in England. So their last victory in England was in 2017 at Headingley, but that was the first one since 2000 for the West Indies, and this is only the second since 2000 for the West Indies. So what did they do right in this game, the West Indies? And was it the West Indies who won this game or England who lost it?
They did a lot right. They batted well on both occasions, really well, particularly in the second innings. They bowled obviously fantastically in the first innings. It seems like we can stand by our criticism of the initial tactical decision, and the game seemed to be won at the toss really, because the pitch didn't deteriorate as much as Stokes predicted.
Yeah.
And wasn't as troublesome on the fifth day. And so really it seems like putting the West Indies into bowl in friendly conditions kind of set the tone for the match. And from an England perspective, obviously there's hope. This being, as you say, only the second victory in 20 years.
Yeah.
And England, as we saw in South Africa and New Zealand to some extent, and the Ashes as well, tend to get destroyed in the first test and then kind of work their way up better through the series.
Come back. Yeah, that's very true. If they do win this series, the West Indies, and obviously there is a long way to go, it will be their first series victory in England since 1988.
There we go then. So the statistical hope is with England. I really think it would be unfair to the West Indies to say England lost the game. I think that England definitely didn't help themselves, but the West Indies won it, and they really played well and deserved the win from really the first day. We kind of said the West Indies deserved to win this one, especially after that first innings batting performance from England.
Yeah, definitely. So what do you think, Kev? What did the West Indies do right in this game in particular?
I think they knew what their strengths were. They knew that their bowling attack was going to be effective, decisive, and they used that. They were confident, I think, in the knowledge that their bowling attack was going to be strong. I wouldn't say that their batting performance was as impressive as they might have hoped. So I think for the West Indies, they'll go back and reanalyze how they can sort of make up for expensive lost runs, particularly in the first innings.
Yeah.
But on the whole, I think it was a test between two very balanced teams in terms of ability and in terms of strength. So what I'd like to see in the next test is England improving on their batting performance, learning from the first test, and from the West Indies, well, sort of learning from their mistakes and consolidating their advantage.
Yeah.
If I'm speaking from a sort of objective position and not as a fan.
Yeah, no, definitely. The West Indies batting performance, I mean, yeah, we obviously they did very well to win the game, and Jermaine Blackwood really sort of threw off the reputation that he has as almost just a T20 player, and he's good for a quick 30, but he can't make game defining, game changing innings, but yesterday was exactly that from him. It was a game-defining inning. But saying that, we have to remember that at lunch they were 35 for 3, and they lost another wicket before they reached 100. And so, the West Indies opening batsmen in that case were very susceptible, especially to the pace of Jofra Archer and what he could do with the ball. And so I do agree with you there that their batting performance was good enough to win the game, but it wasn't probably as great as they'd hoped. And it was really individual players who made the difference for the West Indies. I'm thinking to Jermaine Blackwood yesterday, but then also, on day one you have, and day two especially, you have Jason Holder. His bowling performance was brilliant. And in their first innings as well, you have Shane Dowrich, who really was the difference between them getting an all right score and the West Indies instead setting a total for England that was just on the right side of difficult.
An interesting thing to note is that in either of their innings, England never managed to actually exceed the West Indies first innings total. So they scored 318 and England scored 313 in the second innings and 204 in the first. So actually they were never really ahead of the game in that sense. Jofra Archer can feel probably a little bit vindicated.
Yeah.
After his performance on day 5, that really helped him. We get very harsh on Jofra because he's been hyped so much. We have to remember he's taken 3 fifers in 7 matches or something like that.
Yeah,
Took
it's a
3 or
brilliant
4, 3 yesterday.
He took 3 yesterday.
3 yesterday.
And there were 3 key wickets as well.
And in terms of he sort of took 4 in the sense that he got Campbell to retire hurt.
Yeah.
Which didn't help the West Indies and unsettled their batsmen. So we forget how good Jofra is, and we can be very instantly harsh on him when he has a bad day, which everyone does. But we definitely were reminded yesterday how good he is, and also how inexperienced he is, and how young he is in this Test side. And if he can, I mean, if you look just in terms of statistical progression, 3 fifers in 7 Test matches. Jimmy Anderson's got 28 in 150. So if Jofra keeps going at anywhere near the rate he's going, he will end up as what he's already been cracked up to be, i.e. one of England's all-time greats.
Yeah.
So we really need to, while we're cautious not to let victory paper over the cracks in the side, we also need to not let defeat kind of dampen the light of some very good performances.
And I think Jofra was gave a key performance yesterday, both with the bat, where he made that 23, which pushed England from 170 to a lead of 200. And
first
again,
real batting display we've seen from him in Test cricket. He's averaged about 2 up to this point, and really came out of his shell, smacked a few around, and made a very impressive 23.
Yeah, definitely. And we've been reminded how important he is to this side as well. And so that criticism that he received in especially after day 3 and day 4, was that warranted, do you think, Kev? He had that spat on Twitter with Tino Best, who said that he shouldn't have been in the team, and that Stuart Broad should have been in instead, and that Jofra can bowl pace, but he doesn't have the skill. That's what Tino Best said, and obviously that really rubbed Jofra up the wrong way, and he really he replied to Tino, and they had a good old argument on Twitter. But was that criticism warranted, or do you think that it was premature, and do you think it was people just reacting to him having a bad day?
I hadn't seen that argument, actually. That's the first I've heard of it, and I hadn't seen that tweet. But if I were Jofra, I would be furious at criticism like that, especially if the person criticizing is speaking with such or perceived authority
Yeah.
Obviously, Jofra has talent, and we said that repeatedly now, I think. But I think a player who has only recently joined the national team, who is a young, relatively inexperienced player, but with formidable natural talent, should be allowed space and time to mature into a test environment, which is not an easy environment by any stretch.
Yeah.
So I think criticism like that by someone completely unwarranted to make that sort of criticism isn't helpful.
And
Yeah,
it's
definitely.
ridiculously unfair on Jofra as well to say, well, he's kind of a one-trick pony, and if you look at him and Broad, Jofra just doesn't have the skill. Stuart Broad is one of England's greatest ever bowlers, and he's been around the scene for a long time, played countless test matches.
Yeah.
Of course he has more skill than Jofra. Of course he's just had the time. He's 10 years older, for God's sake. He's had 10 more years to develop that skill, and he's still evolving his bowling. He did a very interesting piece in Sri Lanka before the tour got cancelled about how he's just added some new deliveries to his arsenal and is trying to do things differently and has changed his action. It takes years to build up that skill, and the amount Jofra has for how young he is, he's only 4 years older than us, isn't he?
He's 24, yeah. So
exactly.
So
the amount of skill he has, you can't compare it to someone like Broad.
Oh yeah,
and
definitely.
for the age he is, the pace he bowls, and the fact that he can vary his pace to suit the conditions, which he did nicely in this match. First real example we've seen of him kind of deliberately slow, or as far as I perceived it, kind of deliberately slowing himself down to suit a slower pitch. It's so unfair on him to say he shouldn't be in the team, and especially when Broad's 34 and Jofra is the future.
Definitely.
He needs that experience now.
And it goes back to what we were saying, and we've said this countless times over the last few days. It goes back to that thing that we were saying, that a lot of the skill comes with experience, as you said. And we've said this before, that if you give them, especially Jofra and Mark Wood, if you give them time and if you give them the opportunities to develop their skill, then they will. And yeah, and you know, to people who say that Stuart Broad should have been picked and we would have won this game, we may well have won this game, but it does nothing for 2 years down the line when we're in Australia and Stuart Broad will be 36 by that point, you know, and we need our young bowlers to come through. Or it does nothing for the Ashes even after that, when we need our young bowlers. So to neglect the future and instead, you know, to favour this short-term success isn't the way you should manage and coach a test side. And to Chris Silverwood, especially, to his credit, he's resisted doing that, and he probably did know that, you know, leaving Stuart Broad out, especially in those conditions, would attract a lot of criticism, but he did it anyway because of this sort of thought that, well, you know, we need to develop this future, we need to develop the core of this future England team.
Mark Wood's a bit of a different case because I think he's 30 now, and while he's relatively, in terms of caps, inexperienced, he is a little older than someone like Jofra. But it strikes me that saying, oh, you should have put Stuart Broad in, and you shouldn't have, you know, Jofra just doesn't have the skill. It's a bit like taking Dom Bess, who bowled fantastically, and saying, oh, well, you should put Graham Swan in instead. You know, Dom Bess is 21 years old and and again, is very naturally talented, but it's going to take him 10 years to develop that skill. And I can back this up with statistics. If you look at Graham Gooch's career, one of England's great players, the best period of his career and the best average he had was between the age of 31 and 40.
Yeah.
So it really is so unfair to young bowlers like Archer to say, well, you just don't have the skill to cut it. The skill will come. The natural talent is there. And for someone who supposedly doesn't have the skill, he's taking a lot of test wickets.
Yeah, no, definitely. So just a quick one, especially this aimed at you as well, Kev. You know, we've spoken about the importance of Jofra. We've spoken about this question about skill. where does Jofra go from here now? And the key thing, and just a brief point about this, is has there now been more clarity for England on how to best use him and how to best get the most out of his talent?
I don't know really where else he can go. Only that, as we've said, if he stays in the team, which I think he should, he applies a certain amount of pressure onto the opposition team, because he's really one of only a couple in terms of selection options, properly fast bowlers. So he has to stay around at the very least. So in terms of his future, I think it should be really to develop that skill to try and get selected into as many test teams as possible.
Yeah.
Have that experience in different conditions, in different environments, in different countries, and against different teams. Really, what we're watching is the development of a properly good England star for the future. So really, for us, it's to sit back and watch that happen, and for him, just to sort of fulfill that role.
Yep. No, definitely.
Not to make him seem too much of a sort of superstar messiah, but I mean, he is a good bowler, and he should be allowed to become the best that he can be.
He definitely has the potential, for definite. And okay, so Jacob, what would you say then? Has there been any clarity on how best to use him after yesterday? Is there anything that is added to Joe Root's mind now? Is anything
in terms of where he's going? I think the only answer to that is onwards and upwards.
Yeah.
He's going to carry on taking wickets at frankly a quite alarming rate, and he will, as Kev said, develop that skill over time. And what we have to remember is, for example, if we look at this South Africa tour, I know he didn't play much because he injured his elbow. But you look at a tour like that, and I imagine the same will be true of a tour of India and next time we go to Australia. I imagine Jofra may have one bad day on either of those tours, and he'll get a lot of stick for it. And what you have to remember is, at test level, it's the first time he's ever been touring these countries.
Yeah.
He may have been there with under-19s or whatever, but because he's so relatively inexperienced, he's got to get used to all that stuff at that level, and of course it's going to be a learning curve.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
In terms of how he's used, I think he was used much better in this test match. If you look at the Mount Maunganui test match, this is the infamous example. I think it was the Mount Maunganui one. It was one in New Zealand. The infamous example of him being used badly. Bowled 42 overs in one innings, and that was because the pitch was a road and they were kept out there for years and years. God, it was dull. But he bowled 42 overs in one innings, and he came out in the second innings, and you could see he was knackered. He was exhausted. And who wouldn't be? I bowled 4 overs on the weekend, and I can barely walk. So he was just exhausted. I think the rotation that Ben Stokes had going on was very sensible.
Yeah.
Archer, I don't think he ever bowled more than a 5 or 6 over spell. And even that, definitely. The longer spells was when he was on a bit of a hot streak, and he was definitely in the game.
I think it did help, though, that Ben Stokes was able to bowl very powerfully himself.
Yeah.
So I think he had a better gauge of when the rotations needed to take place, when he himself needed to put himself into the bowling rotation. Something that, I don't know, maybe Joe Root doesn't have that sort of antenna. I'm sure he does have it, but it at a slightly different conception.
I think it speaks a lot to the depth that England has. You've got Ben Stokes as well, who can come in and can he performs at key moments as a bowler. But then you've also got Mark Wood, and you've got Jimmy this time, and then obviously Stuart Broad next time. And then even thinking beyond just the immediate England team, you got players like Chris Wokes, you got Moeen Ali. There are bowlers on the sidelines who can all come in and take up the slack if needed. And so England does have that strength in depth, and I think it really plays well to how Jofra plays, which is and how Jofra is best used, which is short, sharp spells, and where he gets into the rhythm and he looks really dangerous, in terms of taking a wicket. So I think the strength of depth is a key part of that.
I agree with Kev as well, that I think as a bowler, somewhat at least himself, well, he's a very good bowler, but as a kind of half and half himself, Stokes does have a better appreciation for that. I think Root underbowls himself a lot of the time because he is a capable spin bowler. He's a part-timer, but he does have a few test wickets to his name, and I don't think he feels that confidence that Stokes does. The other thing we have to bear in mind is that Ben Stokes is an absolute cyborg and can just bowl and bowl and bowl and bowl and can bowl 40 overs in innings because Ben Stokes is not a human being. And so he's the sort of guy who can strap a team to his back and do that legwork, which lets kind of thoroughbreds like Archer take a slightly shorter spell, not wear themselves out and perform really at their peak.
Definitely. Okay, so we've spoken a lot about England, but one more very brief thing is the question of how badly did England's first innings performance affect their chances in the game? And was the game lost from the moment they made 204 in their first innings?
The game wasn't lost from that moment because nothing about the test was inevitable. Yeah. However, I think that the weaknesses that were on display in that first innings were in the England batting side, or the batsmen. I think that we've been talking a lot about bowlers in this conversation, but really where you make runs is with the batsmen.
Yeah.
And the investment, I think, into serious run-making batsmen in the England side has not been enough.
Yeah.
And so, inevitably, in my view, the runs aren't going to come cheap.
Yeah, definitely.
This goes back as well to the Tino Best Archer spat.
Yeah.
It's all very well saying Archer doesn't have the skill, but he wasn't put in a very good position. And that's a lot of pressure on a bowler. You don't have runs to play with. Every time you go for 4, you feel like you might want to take out a slip and put in an extra cover, which is something Stuart Broad and Jimmy Anderson have been very heavily criticised for. They hate going for runs and they demand mid-off an extra cover and to the detriment. Not that they have a particular detriment to their wicket-taking ability, but for another bowler, that might hurt your chance of getting a wicket, not for the great gods themselves.
Well, we saw this yesterday with Dom Bess, that England's big gamble with batting first was that Dom Bess would be able to come into his own on day 5 and on a last day pitch with the Windies batting last. He'd be able to crank up the pressure and look like taking wickets. But obviously, and this was spoken about a lot during the course of yesterday as well. The reason that Dom Bess wasn't bowled very much is because England simply didn't have the lead in which a spin bowler is effective. Because a spin bowler is always going to leak runs. That's the nature of spin bowling. But
how dare you? We're very economical. There's the man who went for 10 and over on the weekend. And I was bowling pace at that point, not very well.
Oh, Jamie. But spin bowling is obviously inherently you will leak runs. And obviously it will take you a few overs to get into the stride of things. But when you do, spin bowling is very dangerous. But England just didn't have the space in terms of runs to be able to allow Dom Bess to leak runs for a bit and then take a wicket. And it meant that they had to rely on pace. And obviously the pace bowlers they had to rely on are very, very good bowlers. But it was that lack of runs which hindered them. And I do agree with you there, Jacob.
I think there's a very sad thing to come out of this result though, and that's that basically if the next test is won by England, which obviously all England fans hope it is, it makes the third one a must-win, and that means that people like our favourite man Amar Virdi probably won't get a game in that third test, as we speculated he might.
Yeah.
So, Amar, if you're free for the next 2 weeks, come on the show.
Yeah, definitely. We'd love to have you.
If you're not doing anything other than, being a professional cricketer and working extremely hard at that. But who knows? We don't know. But I think that is, on a serious note, a sad byproduct of this. On a happier note, if we lose the next test match, then the series is lost. We can just...
And then Amar Virdi can come on,
although I imagine the coaching staff's reaction to that might be, well, we should at least win one and save face. So
that's true. Yeah.
I expect to see Jimmy Anderson, Stuart Broad, and a million fielders in the ring, just kind of stopping the singles. And
definitely.
But yeah, I think that's a sad thing about England losing this first test. It dramatically decreases the likelihood of people like Virdi and some of the other slightly more fringe players on the squad, the batsmen we talked about, Dan Lawrence and James Bracey, but getting a game.
I think the key thing is that even if they're not used in this series, obviously there's 2 tests against Pakistan coming up, and then it's only 2. It's a 2.
A shame.
Yeah. Oh well. I think it would have been more.
It was going to be
just like
the T20, the shortened county stuff.
Yeah, they have to get all that in at the end of the summer.
Oh wow.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, even if they're not used, especially the younger prospects aren't used in the third West Indies match. Hopefully they'll be used in the Pakistan match because it's a 2-test series, and the coaches might think and selectors might think, well, at least we can take some chances there. And even if they're not used there, someone like Amar Virdi will be used in India.
Should definitely be.
Yeah, and I hope that we see him at least, before the end of this year. I hope we see him make his England debut because it'd be brilliant. Yeah.
We love you, Amar. Come on the show.
We do. We really do. We really rate you and think you're a great player. But yeah, and hopefully you can come on in the show and we can tell you in person just how much you respect.
This is our big campaign. All 10 of our followers are behind you. We're really pushing for you. He's not listening.
We will actually write into the selectors ourselves and say you should pick Amar.
Ed Smith will have a barrage of emails from us, kind of death threats from the mid-Birmingham area. Select Virdi or pay. I must emphasise, for legal reasons, I am definitely joking. We have no intention to do that. I'm very
definitely
sorry.
Not. Yeah, we really don't. Right. Looking ahead then to the rest of the series, because we're one test in now. And looking ahead to both the rest of the series and the rest of the summer, where do both teams go from here? And what changes for both the West Indies and England, and what stays the same?
Something we should probably know, which I for one don't know, is what the West Indies are doing for the rest of the summer. I have no idea who they're playing next.
Oh yeah, we should have a look at that.
So while Pav furiously Googles, I'll talk a bit about England. Obviously Pakistan coming up next. I think they're a very capable team, but maybe not quite on the level of where England are or should be. So I think Pakistan, it's a series we can play a bit more, as we said, youthful talent in and try and blood some new guys. And then we have the ODI series against Ireland, which obviously they announced the squad for that. Lots of interesting young players in there. We could do, in fact, we probably will do an episode on its own about that, because that's a very interesting thing coming up, and we can talk about that certainly. So I think England could have a successful summer, and then it's all steam ahead to the winter tour against India.
Okay, so the font of all knowledge that is Google says,
other search engines are available.
Yes, they are. That says that after the 3 tests in England, the West Indies team will go back to the West Indies, and they will stay there until October, when they fly to Australia, where they play a 3-match T20 series against Australia,
That'll be entertaining.
Yeah, no, really will. And then obviously after that, you've got the World T20 series, and if that goes ahead, then they will be there, and that's the reason they're going ahead to Australia now. And well, in October, not now, but
because I think they already had their kind of test season. I think they played one against Pakistan and no, not Pakistan, Afghanistan.
That was back in November though. That was last November.
Oh.
Yeah, so they haven't played, and I don't know if they're going to have
their last test.
I don't know if they're going to have any more tests, next winter. But then again, one of the things that is always said is that the West Indies and teams like that, smaller teams don't play as many tests as England, Australia, and India do.
Interestingly, they said on the coverage the other day, England have played more tests than any nation in the world last year.
Yeah.
So we're in a very lucky position as England fans.
Yeah, definitely.
To see a lot of good Test cricket despite the global pandemic.
Yep, definitely. Right. So yeah. So what do they change and what do they keep the same?
Fiddle with selection a bit for England, just try and get new talent in.
Yep.
West Indies, obviously, they're changing formats, so the selection will have a bit of an overhaul.
Yeah, definitely.
That will be a really entertaining series. West Indies, a fantastic T20 team.
Oh, yeah.
Interesting to see what Chris Gale does, because he's been floating in and out of the national team.
I mean, it depends. I suppose it probably depends on what day of the week it is for Chris Gale. Whether he's retired or whether he's unretired.
Will he make the T20 World Cup? Because I think he's not really playing from the ODIs anymore, but he plays a few T20s. And
yeah, I mean, after last year's World Cup, he said he was retiring from all forms of international cricket for the West Indies.
But then he took it back.
Yeah, and yeah, so it probably does depend on what day of the week it is and how
he played in November, didn't he?
He did. It was very weird. It's sort of, I suppose, when you're so connected to that international team, and Chris Gale has been the face of West Indies cricket for the last 15 years, and so when you're so connected, it's very hard to walk away. And especially to walk away entirely. But I mean, even then,
when you can still go like Chris Gale can. I mean, he's the best T20 player in history, and he can still smash it out the ground. So why the hell not?
Definitely. But he is getting, he's almost in his 40s now. So there won't be much more for Chris Gale to do for the West Indies team. But let's see. He can always go into coaching.
That would be interesting to see.
Yeah. Oh, definite.
Hit it hard. Knock it out the ground. There's not really much to it.
He will just stand there and say, "My batting."
All you have to be is a huge hulking man with like ripped muscle. I mean, I hate to take it off on another West Indian man crush tangent, but have you seen Chris Gale with his shirt off? He's 39, but he's huge. Is he 39 even? He might be older than that, but he's a massive bloke. Anyway,
he is brilliant. And we seem to have developed another man crush now on Chris Gale.
we seem to like large black fellas. I don't know what that's about.
Right. So, talking about former West Indian players who are now doing things, now in their post-playing careers. Carlos Brathwaite made his debut for TMS and made his debut in the world of commentary and punditry. And I, for one, thought that his performance, over this test match was brilliant, and his punditry was great. I really enjoyed it. And definitely the sort of rapport that he had with Alistair Cook was great.
I was going to say that worked very well, I think, on the commentary side.
Yeah.
Well, it was so hard for me because I have Sky TV. I was watching the coverage.
It's all right for
I know. Woe is me. But I did get a bit of the TMS, and I thought Brathwaite was very good. I thought he was insightful. I thought he.
And even Alistair Cook really, really did well this series.
Yeah, absolutely. Did we hear a bit of Andrew Strauss on there as well?
No. That was Andrew, the stats guy for TMS.
No, I think I confused Andrew Strauss's voice with someone else's voice. But...
Oh yeah, Simon Mann or someone like that. But definitely, I mean, Carlos Brathwaite was really good in his coverage.
The Sky coverage was good as well.
Yeah, we had
I enjoyed
there was that incident with Mike
Are we going
Atherton.
to talk about it?
We are going to talk about it.
For those who didn't watch the Sky coverage or don't know, Mike Atherton was trying to talk about club cricket, and he was talking about Ben Stokes' old club, Cockermouth Cricket Club, and he pronounced it slightly, unfortunately, he pronounced it Cockermouth, and we simply heard, I think it was Rob Key, burst out laughing from the commentary box.
The main thing was that there was more to it than that, actually. He
was there
people to send in reports of what had happened in the club games across the country, and someone from Cockermouth had sent in.
Well, we don't know they were from.
Oh yeah, we don't know they were from there, but they'd sent in Hugh Jardine took for 6 for 9.
Oh, he didn't even read it out. He was too busy giggling.
No, he did. Mike Atherton read out.
I didn't hear that bit. I just heard him say Cockermouth, and them all burst out laughing. But
it was that.
God, really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. So that's why they were all giggling. Rob Key had to do a third man piece and a little analysis piece. And for the first sort of 30 seconds of it, couldn't stop laughing. So we had a bit of dead air while the Sky commentary team pulled themselves together.
Yeah, brilliant.
Other than that, though, they were fantastic, as they always are.
Yeah.
Michael Holding with
oh, he's great. I really love his comments.
Excellent stint. I controversial opinion. I'm a big fan of Nasser Hussain and his.
Oh, I think Nasser Hussain's really good.
And his massive schnoz and his big baldy head. I love him. I think he's fantastic. They've got him, Ian Bishop, Michael Holding. I mean, the Pakistan series, Waqar Younis is coming in, I think.
Yeah,
and
he was on Waqar Younis was on TMS the last time Pakistan were here as well.
Shane Warne's coming in for that really as well, which will be Shane Warne's always quite good.
Yeah.
The new slimmed down Shane Warne.
I mean, definitely though. I really like Nasser's commentary, and I think that the insights he gives are brilliant, and he's always going to be connected with that, obviously that iconic moment at Headingley. And cut away for 4, and he's brilliant.
Sometimes he talks absolute rubbish, but on the whole, he's pretty good.
On the whole, he's pretty good. Yeah, definitely. Michael Holding, as always, is brilliant, and I just wish they'd bring him on TMS. But obviously, Michael Holding does not do radio commentary; he does TV commentary.
Michael Holding has he doesn't have the face for radio commentary. It's just too photogenic. He just has to be on the television.
Yeah. He's too good for TMS.
Yeah.
Well, hang on.
Not that we have anything against Ageas and the crew.
Oh, I love TMS.
Who are
brilliant.
Fantastic, and I'm sure very photogenic in their own way.
And we have to give Ageas a shout out on this show because he gave us a shout out yesterday.
If you are listening, Jonathan Agnew, just so you know, my prediction not Pabs was correct. He said I'd get a 50 and a 5 I said I'd get a duck and 5 wides. We met in the middle. I got a duck and 3 wides and 2 no balls. So cheers, Ageas.
So if you're in the search for another commentator, you know which one to pick out of the two of us.
Hey, you don't need to be able to play cricket to talk about it. As I prove every night on this show. I can criticise the best. I just can't do it.
Right, so we are in broad agreement that both the BBC and Sky did some great commentary, and their coverage of the
other broadcasters are, of course, available.
They are, but other broadcasters don't show.
Not for the cricket.
Has cricket. Yeah. The question I want to ask, and obviously it goes away from where we've been very focused on the game the last few episodes, but I want to talk about something wider, which is, how did the absence of crowds affect our experiences of the game? And so for you guys, how did that affect you guys in terms of your sort of experience of the game and watching the game? And especially, I suppose, Jacob, especially for you, because you watch the game, how was the absence of crowds like?
I didn't mind it too much.
Yeah,
I've not watched a lot of county cricket, but it's a very similar atmosphere. Two blokes and his dog, or in this case, a bloke and a long lens camera who's a photographer for the game and stuff. But I didn't mind. You still have the commentary, and in a way, it's kind of nice to hear the players talking on the field and so on. Heard a bit of bad language at some point on the stump mics, but it was fine. I think it's a very small sacrifice to get Test cricket back and
definitely
to not have people getting ill and stuff. So I have no problem with it. And obviously, it's great having the fans in. It helps the players as well. It pumps them up.
And obviously, for us, we had tickets. All three of us had tickets.
Oh God, yeah, we did.
And they were cancelled.
But I think it was fine, and we just want everyone to stay safe, protect themselves from this horrendous virus. And then the more we do that, the quicker it'll pass, and the quicker we can get back to watch Test cricket. So please, Pav, use the money you saved to get us tickets for India, please.
We will. When India come next summer, we're all going to go down and watch the
guy I was playing with on the weekend. Very lucky bloke. He got, I think, tickets for the Lord's Test of this series.
Oh.
And because India are playing there next year,
he gets priority.
Transferred him to India.
So he's already got. Oh my
he's
God!
Got them. And for a lower price as well. I think you might have to pay 30 quid extra or something. He might have to make up the difference. But he's got India tickets already, so I was very jealous.
Yeah, because Lord's Test match at Lord's.
If we miss out, the best we can get is a ODI against Pakistan or something.
Yeah. I mean, that's why. I mean, Ed Baston isn't hosting any games next year, which is any tests next year, which is a shame. But no, definitely the absence of crowds was a worthy was a worthy price to pay. You know, it was the price that has to be paid to stop people from getting ill and still have international cricket and also live sport on our screens and sort of and on the radio as well. But no, definitely, I think it helped that it was such a tense game, because I think we wouldn't have had a different view. You know, we would still have been grateful that Test cricket was back, but just the fact that it was such a good game in essence. It was a low scoring thriller, and both teams took it down to the wire. I think that was just great, and I think it really added to the experience.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anything
to add, Kev?
Yeah, go on, Kev.
No, very little. I was bothered very little by the absence of the crowds. I quite liked the fact that what was going on the pitch was less distracted by the fact that every now and again the camera panned into the crowd.
Yeah.
Focused on a man, I don't know, asleep. You know, and the bits of distraction that tends to happen. I liked that it was quite focused on what was going on the pitch, and actually it was a lot clearer what was going on the pitch because there wasn't a crowd.
Yeah,
I don't know. For me, it worked watching it on TV. Obviously, for me and for most cricket fans, it would have been a joy to actually be there and watch it.
Yeah, no, for definitely.
But I didn't mind too much.
Yeah.
I had a few moments listening on the radio in the car, going about over the weekend and so on. Every time, because it was on long wave, every time we drove under a railway bridge or anything, we got this massive rush of static, which sounded oddly like a cheer. I thought it had gone down to the brain was programmed that way, and then I realised, oh, hang on, there's no crowds there.
Yep. I spent the whole time listening on the app, on the BBC app, which is great. And then I mean, I might try and get a sort of one of those Now TV passes for the next for the next test, just so that, I can actually see. Yeah, it's worth it, definitely. It's a worthy sort of amount of money to pay. Right, so the last thing that we do, and this become a routine for our coverage of test matches especially, is we finish with our star player, moment of the day, and one word to describe the day. So Jacob, do you want to start?
It was all so long ago, wasn't it? A full 24 hours. I think star player West Indies got to be Jermaine Blackwood. really cracked on, played an uncharacteristically well-paced innings and a very good innings, and just won the game for them. Really pulled them through it. If he'd kind of gone and then had been a little collapse, Holder maybe had gone for a few, then it was a very different game. So Blackwood for England, for West Indies, for England, Archer.
Yeah.
Just he bowled really well. Seemed to me the pick of the bowlers, and as we've discussed throughout this whole thing, are really just he's only got to go up, and he'll be a very good bowler, and already is, but he'll be even better. Moment of the day, probably John Campbell getting cracked on the toe. That added a bit of suspense because it basically added a wicket. So when they were 4 down, they're effectively 5 down. I know he came back, but throughout kind of the most part of the day, it was a bit of a would he, wouldn't he come back kind of thing, and how long could he hold out. So that added some tension. One word to describe the day, I'm going to say deserved, and that's specifically in the context of the West Indies. They deserved a win.
Yep.
And one word to describe today, two words to describe today, looking forward. Looking forward to the next test.
Yeah, definitely. Go on, Kev.
I think I'm going to agree with both of your choices for star player, Joff and... Wait, who is it? Campbell?
Blackwood.
Yeah. And for the moment of the day, I think the most enjoyable, the one that I was sitting there watching and really enjoying, was Mark Wood's dismissal of... who was it? Hope. Jake.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hope. The one that sort of cracked into the middle of the stumps, and it just sounded so satisfying.
Yeah.
For our listeners who can't see this, both Pav and I are making extremely satisfied faces.
Yeah, we are great.
Very enjoyable, wasn't it? And it was quite nice to have Mark Wood take that wicket as well.
Oh yeah, definitely.
It must have been very satisfying for him as well.
Yeah.
A word to describe the day, I sort of have the same problem. It was such a long time ago. I've forgotten what I was. But I mean, I was not too disappointed. Quite contented, I think, that it was such a balanced test match. That there was good cricket on both sides.
Yeah.
That again, I'm looking forward to seeing how the lessons are incorporated into the teams for the next 2 test matches. So yeah, all positive all around.
Definitely. I mean, for star player, England, it has to be Jofra. He answered the critics. He didn't need to answer the critics, but he did. And he did it in an emphatic way. For the West Indies, Jermaine Blackwood, again, he just that innings was game defining, and that pushed the West Indies on to win. And had he not played an innings like that, they maybe would have fallen short. But he restrained his sort of he restrained his reputation and his desire to go big and play those really aggressive, dangerous shots, and instead played a very restrained, gritty test innings. And at times it was very gritty, but he did it, and he did it really well. And it was just sad that he didn't manage to get a second test 100, but that was all right. The 100 was less important than the fact that he carried the team home. Moment of the day. Oh, it was so long ago. Again, yeah. My moment of the day was Jofra's 3 wickets in the morning. I think obviously there's 3 different moments of the day, but that sort of that passage of play, because what it did for Jofra was this announcement that I've not gone away. I've not lost anything. I may have had a bad day 2 days ago, but now look at what I'm doing and look at where I am. So that was my moment of the day. And then my word to describe the day would be tense. It was tense through the day. Obviously, then towards the end of the day, it became more apparent that the West Indies were going to win, but tense through the day. So now, just before we finish, one last thing, which is we've done that for the day. What about for the game? And not so much. Star player, and this is just star player from one team. Moment of the day, moment of the game, and then one word to describe the game. So those three things for the game.
Oh, so only star player from one
Yeah.
one team, sort of man of the match type thing.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, first of all, just let me say that actually the loss has kind of, as England fans, dampened our spirits a bit, and we've got to keep from an objective perspective. Fantastic game of cricket.
Yeah.
And this series is shaping up to be really, really exciting. And
It's going to be
if England follow their trajectory of a bit weaker in the first test and then come back progressively through the tests, I think the last two games at Old Trafford will really be something to behold, and could be a very good series. Star player of the match, I think you've got to probably give it to Jason Holder.
Yeah.
The most complete performance, I'd say, from anyone in the game. He batted the way he needed to, batted pretty well. He bowled excellently, and he captained his team fantastically. So I've got to give it to Holder, I think. Moment of the game. I think I'll go really, really early and say 4 balls into his innings, Dom Sibley's wicket on the first day. I think that set a tone for that day, the next day.
Yeah.
And it seems that ultimately the game. You could also put the toss in there, the decision at the toss.
Yeah.
I want to give actually an honourable mention to at the toss when they did the toss and then they immediately both shook hands and realised they can't do that.
Yeah.
But I think in terms of impactful moments in the game, Sibley's wicket just starting that collapse and setting the tone was the one. And the one word to describe the game, exciting, and it set up this to be a really excellent series.
Definitely. Kev?
I totally agree about Jason Holder. I don't think there's any debate about that. I think the moment of the day, and I'm going to go with a slightly more positive angle, I think Zach Crawley's 76 was very promising.
Yeah.
It was very energetic and showed a lot of promise. So that lifted my spirits as an England fan, and I enjoyed that 76. I think I'd go with promising all round, promising for the West Indies to take their victory forward, promising for England to learn from their mistakes and sort of realise what their strengths are and build on them, and promising for the series, which will be really interesting as cricket fans.
Yeah, definitely.
And of course for the game as a whole after the pandemic and so on. Really promising to have Test cricket back and to see it doing so well.
Yeah,
for sure. I would say Jason Holder, the star player. Just his captaincy, and the way he performed, especially with the ball. With the bat, obviously that first innings wasn't as fluent as he can be, but with the ball, he really defined that. His fifer in that first innings really defined the game. And following on from that, I think my moment of the day, or my moment of the game, would be Holder's wicket of Stokes in the first innings, because that really got rid of all hope for a big total for England then. And at that point, it was just about, let's hang on as far as we can. And that really then continued. That the hangover from that was felt over the next few days, and felt until the end of the game, really. So that's my moment of the game, Holder's wicket of Stokes in the first innings. One word to describe the game, hopeful. There's hope. Firstly, that obviously the West Indies have shown hope and this message of hope that West Indies Test cricket is back after so long. England, there's hope in that some of their young players, Crawley, as you said, Kev, Jofra, are looking very promising. And then
Don Bear.
Yeah, exactly. And then hope also that, you know, for Test cricket, that, well, this is a format of the game that's here to stay. And there's been a lot said and a lot written over the last few years about the death of Test cricket, but that is premature news. And from this series, you know, we've seen that, or from this game especially, we've seen that Test cricket is still alive and kicking.
Well, quick show of hands, and for our listeners, our quick show of voices. Whose favourite format of the game is Test cricket?
Yep.
Here. So I think
unanimous agreement there.
As long as that sort of thing can carry on around cricket fans, then Test cricket isn't going to die. It's lasted for so long.
Definitely.
It will just carry on. Hopefully, fingers crossed. But yeah, excellent guys.
Brilliant. So before we finish, remember to send in your questions for tomorrow's episode, and get people who are beginners as well to send in their questions. And if they want to know more about the game, get them to send in their questions. And the other thing to do is to remind you guys that for our coverage of the second test, we will be joined by a professional cricketer. So great stuff. Brilliant. So that is all we have for today. And that is all we have for our coverage of the first test. It's been a delight to share that with you guys. And we will go onwards for the rest of the test series. And then obviously after the test series is done and in between test matches, it will be once a week updates. So,
thank you guys who are listening and watching so much for getting on board with this. The response we've had has been fantastic. You know, we're a couple of students who just really love cricket, and this is our first test series doing this. We've been planning it for a bit, but it's all been a bit hectic. We've had to master social media platforms and so on. So definitely. It's really, really touching to have such a good response from our social group and beyond, who, you know, we really didn't think there was that much interest in this sort of thing.
Yeah, so we've discovered people who have been into cricket, and are into cricket, who we didn't know about, who we know, you know, friends of ours as well, but also people that we know who we didn't realize that they're actually this invested in the game. And it's been great to see, and it's really brought people together. So thank you guys for giving your time to listen to this and for giving your support to us. And we will see you tomorrow and then for the second test.
Yeah. And just again, thanks for listening, and we are planning to do this for kind of as long as we can, and we will definitely be next couple of tests, Pakistan series, India series in the winter, and as long as we can after that. So
we'll be covering all of that. So thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.
See you.
And thanks to Kev as well.
Oh no,
definitely. We don't want to forget him, his second appearance on the pod. And if anyone else is interested in appearing, because Amar Virdi and Jason Holder are blanking us. So if you want to come on, and if you're interested in the game, talk to us and we'll find time. And you'll definitely be seeing more of Kev, over the next few weeks as well, and beyond. But yeah, definitely. So that is that, as they say. And goodbye from us. And thank you for listening. Bye.